traditional leaders ahead of the October presidential elections. Details of these stories and more are coming up shortly.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
My name is Sankule Janko. Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Ghana, Liberia and Sierra Leone. Newslink begins in the Gambia, while civil society organizations are calling for transparency regarding the sale of assets belonging to former President Yahya Jammeh. This demand follows an investigative report that uncovered abuse of office, corruption and conflict of interest associated with the sale of the former president's properties. The government has acknowledged the report findings but maintains that due process was followed throughout the entire sale process. Augustine Coley reports.
On February 18, 2025, President Mahama issued a March 31 deadline for his appointees, whose nominations predated that announcement to declare their assets. However, more than a month after the grace period expired, some appointees have still not complied with the directive. Speaking at the official launch of the Code of Conduct for Public Officials at the presidency, President Mahama announced financial sanctions for defaulters.
An update provided by the Auditor General to my office indicate that some of you failed to meet that deadline. For all those who are appointed or nominated before 31st March 2025 and failed to meet the deadline, you are to forfeit 3 months of salary to be donated to the Ghana Medical Trust Fund, named after me, Mahama Cares, in addition to 1 month's salary that I've asked all appointees to donate to the Mahama Cares Trust Fund. So it means that those who omitted to declare your assets by the date, you are paying 4 months' salary to Mahama Cares.
The president further issued an ultimatum to all government appointees who have yet to comply with the asset declaration laws, warning that they should consider themselves dismissed if they fail to meet a final deadline of May 7, 2025.
However, if by close of day Wednesday, 7th May 2025, any of you still fails to declare your assets, count yourself automatically dismissed. The Assets Declaration regime is an important mechanism to check corruption and abuse of office, and it must be
A report published by investigative journalists at the Republic newspaper on April 30, 2025, revealed that the Gambian government authorized the sale of assets belonging to former President Yahya Jammeh without following due process. These assets included properties, herds of cattle, vehicles, and businesses, among others. In response to the investigative report, the government issued a statement on Monday denying any wrongdoing. The statement, signed by the Minister of Justice, asserted that the Gambian government acted within the bounds of the law and in the public interest. It emphasized that the processes followed were transparent and aimed at maximizing the value of the recovered assets. Additionally, the government stated that all the sold assets had undergone an audit by the National Audit Office. However, civil society organizations in the country, including the Edward Francis Small Center for Rights and Justice, expressed concerns about the developments. Madi Jopate is the executive director of this organization.
For this new government to come around and then also to loot the assets that were collected, that Jammeh had stolen, for them to come back and also steal those assets is very annoying and shocking. But what this government has shown since 2017 to date is that it is no different from Jammeh when it comes to corruption.
Meanwhile, Madi Jobate emphasized the need for transparency in the sale of ex-President Jammeh's assets.
We are requesting that the Ministry of Justice provide the list of the assets that have been identified through the Jammeh Commission, to also provide the reports and minutes of a ministerial committee we understand was set up to oversee the management and sale of the assets.
It should be noted that since the Jammeh Commission of Inquiry submitted its final report on March 29, 2019 regarding Jammeh's administration, the Gambian government has not fully disclosed information about the implementation of the Commission's recommendations.
Augustine Coley with that report. We apologize for the previous sound that came That was for the Ghana story. And in fact, that's exactly where we're going now, because Ghana's President John Mahama has threatened to dismiss government appointees who failed to declare their assets by the deadline of March 31st, 2025. In addition, the president redirected that non-compliant officials will forfeit 3 months of their salaries, which will be donated to the Ghana Medical Trust Fund. President Mahama made these statements during the launch of a new code of conduct for the government appointees at the Jubilee House on Monday, May 5. The president emphasized that asset declaration is a crucial anti-corruption measure that must be upheld. WDR's Nadidi Tete reports.
On February 18, 2025, President Mahama issued a March 31 deadline for his appointees, whose nominations predated that announcement to declare their assets. However, more than a month after the grace period expired, some appointees have still not complied with the directive. Speaking at the official launch of the Code of Conduct for Public Officials at the presidency, President Mahama announced financial sanctions for defaulters.
An update provided by the Auditor General to my office indicates that some of you failed to meet that deadline. For all those who were appointed or nominated before 31st March 2025 and failed to meet the deadline, you are to forfeit 3 months of salary to be donated to the Ghana Medical Trust Fund, named after me, Mahama Cares, in addition to 1 month's salary that I've asked all appointees to donate to the Mahama Cares Trust Fund. So it means that those who omitted to declare your assets by the date, you are paying 4 months' salary to Mahama Cares.
The president further issued an ultimatum to all government appointees who have yet to comply with the asset declaration laws, warning that they should consider themselves dismissed if they fail to meet a final deadline of May 7, 2025.
However, if by close of day Wednesday, 7th May 2025, any of you still fails to declare your assets, count yourself automatically dismissed. The Assets Declaration regime is an important mechanism to check corruption and abuse of office, and it must be respected by all.
The President's directive is part of ongoing efforts to strengthen transparency and accountability within his administration. Asset Declaration is mandated by Article 286 of Ghana's 1992 Constitution and the Public Office Holders Declaration of Assets and Disqualification Act 1998, Act 550. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
Meanwhile, the Coalition for Peaceful Change in Cote d'Ivoire, PCI, has announced a major rally and meeting with the country's religious and traditional leaders ahead of the October 2025 presidential election. The organization held a press conference on Monday to discuss the country's socio-political situation. It is calling on the Ivorian government to work toward a peaceful political and social climate during and after the pending presidential elections. Abdullahi Hassan has details in the following report.
According to CAP Cote d'Ivoire, the Ivorian socio-political environment has deteriorated following the revision of the electoral roll. The coalition, which brings together several opposition political parties, is warning of the approaching presidential election and calling on all stakeholders in the process to mobilize to pressure the government to hold a dialogue. Simon Gbagbo is a spokesperson of the coalition CAP Cote d'Ivoire.
The CAP Cote d'Ivoire believes that it is time to act in concert with all stakeholders to restore a climate of trust and a peaceful political environment for elections without violence this year.
After outlining the main causes of what it describes as deterioration of the socio-political environment in the country, the CAP Cote d'Ivoire took this opportunity to formulate several proposals. Here is Simon Gbagbo again speaking on the matter.
The CAP Cote d'Ivoire strongly calls for the convening of a political dialogue with another country in order to bring about its repercussions for implicit elections, elections without violence. And in this regard, it announces to the entire nation the organization of a major rally in Abidjan on May 30.
Additionally, CAP Cote d'Ivoire announces an information and exchange tour in the coming days with chancelleries, religious groups, traditional chiefdoms, and trade union organizations.
A report from WDR's Abidjan correspondent, Marcia Aristin Blay, voiced by Abdullahi Hassan.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In Nigeria, the Association of Resident Doctors in the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, begins a 3-day warning strike this Tuesday, May 6, 2025. This decision was made during an emergency Congress meeting held on Monday at the Asokoro District Hospital in Abuja. The president of the association, Dr. George Ebong, stated that the strike is necessary due to the recent dismissal of 127 health workers by the FCT Civil Service Commission on last Friday, which was conducted without proper procedures. Dr. Ebong described the dismissals as inhumane and illegal, calling for the immediate reinstatement of the affected workers along with the payment of their April salaries. Additionally, the Association of Resident Doctors in the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria is demanding the resignation of Emeka Eze, the chairman of the FCT Civil Service Commission. The doctors warn that if their demands are not addressed by FCT Minister Newslink and the FCT administration within 3 days, they would escalate their action to an indefinite strike, potentially shutting down hospitals throughout Nigeria's capital. Let's take a closer look at the Sahel region, where the government of Burkina Faso is engaging with media owners amid reports of crackdown on press freedom. On Monday, May 5, Burkinabe Minister of Communication, Gilbert Ouadraogo, assured media executives that the government is committed to promoting professional journalism amid security crisis in the country. This meeting took place at Burkina Faso as further decline in Reporters Without Borders press freedom rankings. The country has fallen from 86th place in 2024 to 105th in 2025 out of 180 countries ranked. However, the information provided by the Burkina Minister of Communication reassured the media owners present at the meeting. Below is an excerpt from Minister Wadr and Siriek Pare, the publishing director of the news website lafaso.net, one of the media owners who attended the meeting.
We are not asking you to conceal the truth. We are calling on you to exercise responsibility, the responsibility that is the foundation of your profession. We are not seeking to censor, but rather to coordinate. We do not want to dominate information, but to restore its meaning to the service of national survival. Already, for the initiative of inviting media professionals, media managers to come and discuss with him to see, as he said, create relaxation in the media sector, which is in dire need today. He has committed to working towards this. We take his words for it, and we are therefore satisfied with the commitments that have been made.
You just listened to Burkina Faso's Minister of Communication, Gilbert Ouadraogo, and Siriek Pare, the publishing director of the news website lefaso.net. In Benin, more than a dozen people accused of supplying fuel to armed groups appeared before the Commission for the Prevention of Cruel, Inhumane, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment of Offences on Monday. They were arrested in early April in the commune of Banikwara, the far north of Benin. Upon their arrival in court, these alleged traffickers all denied the charges against them. The 12 farmers were stopped while riding motorcycles and found with tanks containing 10 to 15 liters of fuel, which they did not have authorization to carry. The farmers are suspected of supplying fuel to armed groups operating in northern Benin. The prosecution asserts that this activity indirectly supports terrorist networks active in the border area. The 12 suspects have been in pre-trial detention since April 17 and are awaiting further proceedings. However, the trial has been adjourned until June 23 for closing arguments. We now move to Liberia, where the government is constructing the largest post-war poultry facility valued at $26 million. Known as the AgroTop project, this new development is set to transform the landscape of eggs and chicken production in the country, aiming to significantly reduce dependency on imported poultry products. WDR's correspondent Abraham Parker has the rest of the story.
Upon his arrival at the 50-acre poultry site currently under development, President Bouaka reaffirmed his administration's unwavering commitment to the agricultural sector, identifying it as a cornerstone for Liberia's economic advancement. According to President Bouaka, agriculture will be one of the nation's proudest achievements, emphasizing the importance of local production.
Let's see, because this should be able to to supply a lot of areas. Let's see how it works, because this is something that we've been looking for.
Meanwhile, Kula Fofana, the presidential press secretary, provided further insights about the project, indicating that the initiative is funded through a cooperative loan agreement with various implementing partners. She stated that the agro-top facility is projected to produce over 200,000 eggs daily, which will not only address local demand, but also mitigate health risks associated with imported frozen poultry products.
This is a $26 million project. That's the total cost of this project for now. This is a 100% Liberian owned, but it's a loan that the Liberian government took to be able to do such a project. And the expectation is that the Liberian government is 100% is the Liberia government in partnership with this company to implement this project for Liberia, for Liberians, and contractors, employees.
As the project progresses, the first batch of ticks is expected by July, marking a pivotal step in this initiative. The government envisions that the successful implementation of the AgroTop project will not only achieve self-sufficiency in egg and poultry production, creating a new era of economic transformation for Liberia. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker reporting from Monrovia.
You are still listening to Newslink on West African Democrats Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. CSOs in the Gambia called for accountability in the sale of ex-President Jammeh's assets. Association of Doctors in Nigeria's capital Abuja begins a 3-day warning strike against the dismissal of over 100 health workers by the government. Ghana's President Mahama redirects a 3-month salary of public officials who failed to declare their assets. And the Coalition for Peaceful Change in Côte d'Ivoire announces a major rally with religious and traditional leaders ahead of the October presidential elections. Still ahead in the news, we have the press, guest interview and sport news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
The African continent is losing its active labor force to skin cancer and pigmentation issues caused by the use of bleaching products. Many individuals feel pressured to meet the beauty standards associated with having light skin, particularly in beauty pageants. In response to this troubled trend, several prominent religious organizations are encouraging African youth to appreciate their natural skin color and build resilience against the harmful effects of skin bleaching. Adama Bineta Sour, the executive director and writer of the Senegalese feature film Timpi Tampa, echoed this message at the screening of the film in Dakar on Monday. Christopher Atechu was at the screening ceremony and filed this report.
The feature film, known as Timpi Tampa, a bold fusion of French and Wolof with a touch of international flair, challenges the long-standing beauty standards upheld by pageant shows that glorify light skin while marginalizing dark-skinned individuals. This trend has for decades suppressed African identity, cultural values, and the self-esteem of many African youth. Meet Halilu, a dark-skinned young man who makes a surprising move and double cast as Layla, a dark-skinned woman in the Miss Student competition, a pageant typically dominated by light-skinned contestants. His daring decision is aimed at breaking the norm, giving dark-skinned women the visibility they deserve, and ultimately saving lives. Halilu's motivation is deeply personal. His mother battles a severe case of skin cancer, which gradually deteriorates her health condition each day. Director and writer Adama Benita Sow believes Timpi Tampa has the power to revolutionize Senegal's film industry and resonate with audience worldwide.
It was a sweet revolution because it's the first time we see a double role. For the producer of the movie is what we call a popular movie.
Other cast members also shared words of encouragement and hope.
They have to be confident and we are all beautiful. when you have a black skin in your family, people say if you bleach your body, you're going to have a very good husband. But in the society change.
Timpi Tampa, which translates to neither light nor black, in Wolof, and a notable recognition at the 2025 FESPACO, and is now set to premiere at the upcoming African Film Festival in New York.
Christopher Aticho filed that report.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Let's join Abraham Parker in the Liberian capital Monrovia for the press review.
And our first stop is the Inquirer newspaper with these headlines. Liberia Electricity Corporation, the LEC, promises stable electricity, vows to end load shedding and fight power theft. Government commits to elevate Liberia's aviation sector. Bone County Presidential Palace, US $280,000 allotment backfires. President Bouaka unveils foreign policy vision with arrest agenda. Up next is the news, the nation's news since 1989. Eminent power shielding aid acting LEC boss reveals. 9 former LPRC workers guilty for defrauding government of US $941,000. The Heritage newspaper is up next. President of Barbados to visit Liberia after 116 years of ancestral ties. Ex-LDEA boss wins $1.5 million lawsuit in defamation case against the Fatiga brothers. And Lord is leadership. Former Chief Justice Scott cautions lawyers on legal ethics and court respect. We move to the Improper Daily newspaper with these headlines. Inspector General Cooper not dismissed. While the public is concerned why about 8 instructors from the University of Liberia were being dismissed for academic flaw that led to the passage of the Inspector General Cooper graduating from the University of Liberia when he did not attend the university in full and he's still working in government. Some civil society organizations and Liberian citizens are as well calling on the president to dismiss the Inspector General of the Ministry of Commerce for academic fraud. Cut back in students' enrollment. Use aid out. Government of Liberia in. Liberia National Bar Association President statement troubles Supreme Court ruling. Our last stop is the Independent newspaper. We must ensure culture of safety, Global Money Vice President asserts. And Monrovia considered data school bus demands evidence of corruption. Well, that does it for this Tuesday's edition of Press Review from Liberia's capital, Monrovia.
Thanks to Abraham Parker for the press review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
The guest interview segment this afternoon takes us back to the Gambia, where civil society organizations are calling for transparency regarding the sale of assets belonging to former President Yahya Jammeh. This demand follows an investigative report that uncovered abuse of office, corruption, and conflicts of interest associated with the sale of the former president's properties. The government acknowledged the report findings but maintains that due process was followed throughout the entire sale process. Our guest is Madi Jobate, Executive Director of the Edward Francis Small Center for Rights and Justice.
Shocking and annoying, and but at the same time not surprising, because since 2017 this government has demonstrated that it is not interested in transparency and accountability. The reason Jammeh was removed was simply because of his corruption and his human rights violations, total disregard of the law and so on, so that we replaced it with another government, and of course on the promise that we will investigate Jammeh, and that investigation to use it to restore rights, to ensure justice and accountability, but also to reform the system, so that the investigations conducted were the TRRC and the Janet Commission. Janet Commission was looking at his corruption and TRRC was looking at his human rights violations. So for us to have those reports that information through these two commissions, and then for this new government to come around and then also disregard those reports and go further to plunder, to loot the assets that were collected, that Jammeh had stolen, for them to come back and also steal those assets. It's very annoying and shocking, but what this government has shown since 2017 to date is that it is no different from Jammeh when it comes to corruption. And so it is one of shock, but at the same time, not surprised.
We've just seen a statement issued by the Ministry of Justice to say, actually, the government said it has taken note of the report, the investigative report, but it says that they followed due process as far as they are concerned. Nothing illegal was done.
Yeah, I mean, that statement was not saying anything. If anything, it was a very insulting statement, because you just can claim, yes, we are following due process. But of course, if they had read that report, it should have been clear to them that they did not follow due process. They are under pressure and had to respond. And so that's why they came up with that meaningless statement, which, is a further manifestation of the corruption and of this government. What they are doing is to run away from responsibility and to cover up corruption and illegality.
Edward Francis Small, Logistics for Human Rights, what are your demands?
As a result of this report, submit a request for information using the Access to Information Act to the Ministry of Justice to demand full disclosure of the way and manner these assets, which were stolen and personalized by former President Jammeh, by the ministry to disclose them. So we have submitted that letter to the ministry this morning. We are requesting the ministry to release all reports regarding the sale of these assets, which includes the names of buyers, the items which were sold or bought or not sold or bought, the revenue collected, and any other matter relating to it. Because that is the starting point to determine next steps, such as going to court or even staging a protest and other things. But first of all, we got to know what happened. So that's our demand, that the government comes out publicly and tell Gambians, what happened as we demanded in our statement. Yeah.
Madi Jabate is the Executive Director of the Edward Francis Small Center for Rights and Justice. And in sports, of course, all roads lead to the San Siro in Italy as Inter Milan set to welcome Barcelona for a place in the final of the UEFA Champions League tonight. The first leg semi-final last in Spain ended in a 6-goal thriller after a 3-3 draw. So a winner tonight will get to the final of the UEFA Champions League. I'm afraid we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Faluso and Umu Danyogo for the technical assistance. To interact with us via our social media platforms X and Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Coming up at 1 o'clock is the second edition of our major news in French, which is Info Sevu with Mustafa Jakite. I am Sankule Janko. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.